Hey guys, Gabriel from Ungraceful Toad here, and today I have another JoJo's figure for you. Today this is a figure from Medicos Entertainment, I believe is how you pronounce it, and it's Jonathan Joestar. Now, just a quick couple of things. Medicos Entertainment is actually the people who make the Super Action statues, which are the posable statues. So they've done hundreds, and I mean hundreds of JoJo figures, and that's like their main focus is with posable action figures. But they do a couple of these Busk-esque figures, so I'm expecting a lot from the quality of sculpt and paintwork when it comes to JoJo's. And one of the other slightly more interesting things about this figure is one of those figures that had multiple releases in 2007 with its original release, and then 2 re-releases in 2010 and 2013. And this particular art that it's based on is some of the chapter art that you'll see in the manga, sort of at the beginning of each chapter. That was colorized, and it was also used in one of the EDs for one of the series. And you take a look up just Jonathan Joestar, and you'll find this art quite easily. So quick look at the box. It's quite a tall figure, so we'll go through your hand for a little bit. We've got a sticker up in the top corner. Consistently around the box you'll see we've got photos of the figure, and then our outline and our name. Each side we have a mirrored look. We have a faded out picture of the figure with all this cool banding going around and this cool waving window. It's quite a consistent this waving window. It's quite a cool idea. All our warnings and such. And again, the figure photo is put around and enlarged and filtered out. More of this striping, a bit more text, but it's pretty much sort of a mirror all the way around. An interesting window on the top, some more text, and there's nothing really going on with the bottom. So let's take a look at the figure himself. So here he is. He's quite a big one, considering he's sort of a semi-bust, sort of cut off at the knees, but he's quite a big, and he's probably one of the heaviest figures I've ever felt, although the base is hollow, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So first impressions is, we have a lot of green going on, obviously, but it's not done lazily. And what I mean by this is, all the shading here on the hands and where there's different colours done, they've actually been painted well. It isn't just green over the top and we'll slap a bit of colour on. So for example here on the bracelets, we've just got, it could have just been solid gold, you know, these things, these gems and such, could have just been gold thrown on, but we've got nice well painted red colour there. And we've got variations within the green, so like here on the strip this is a lighter green. Our chest slightly light, there's some paint defect here, where the line is a bit messy. Let's take a closer look at that. Just there you can see there's a bit of yellow flecked on, and one of the green lines is a bit bumpy here at the top. Just there. And taking more on the paintwork. This could have just been a solid green, but they've tried to put some effort into it, and there's sort of a darker green underlay. And on the camera it comes up quite well, but in person it looks a tiny bit messy. But in contrast to that, these little balls look really great. There's like a metallic sort of sheen to them. Looks really good. And again, this is probably the most disappointing part of the paintwork is here, where this is just, I feel like the strips could have been done in yellow or a darker green or something, just to bring a bit more colour to it. I am very sort of critical of this, just at first, because I think if you look at it sort of in this level of detail and then you take a step back, what you'll realise is it all works very well together. So again, this blue and this pink, not a huge fan of the colour, but it's very clean. And one of the highlights for me of this is the texturing on these pants. It's kind of got this almost leathery line work to it, which is kind of hard to see on camera. But the texturing is done incredibly well, and the shading, brilliant. So it's more colour choice than it is application of the paint that I think is slightly letting it down. Stripe work on this belt is done very well. Again, not buckle, but a different colour. And sort of, I feel like at some points, you know, we've got different colours here. Maybe it should have been done here. We should have thought a bit more about doing it. But again, it's making it accurate to the manga drawing. Again, you can see the texturing here done really well, and the shading. And of course, Jonathan was the biggest Joestar, so the muscles done brilliantly with the shading and the depth that's sculpted so well into the back, and it's sort of how the cloth is gripping to his back muscles. The hair is also done very well, the sculpting's very clean, and we've got some nice shading to it, sort of just to bring some interest and some nice colouring on all these bits of his sort of hat headdress sort of thing going on. There's a lot of detail going on. It's all been folded together and done very well. And there's a quick look at his face, although hidden behind his hand. That again is done very, very well. It's very clean. Take a look at the muscles up front as well. Abs gripping the chest. The cloth's all done very tightly and well done, and there's a nice sculpting on his abs. There's sort of the taper of his hips and things. The only disappointing part I think for the muscle here is this forearm. I think it just looks a bit inhuman almost. I feel like they've probably over sculpted it a bit, and it's just, I feel like it's probably the worst part of the sculpting altogether is just this sort of the way the crease is done this form. I just don't think it looks right. There's a bit of dust there. But this side is much better. The triceps done very well. We've got some striations and the detail in his forearm, although most of it's covered here. As mentioned before, this base is actually hollow, but the shading on it done very well. It's quite a clean, well done look to it, very consistent all the way around. I feel like what would have been a really nice touch is if they've written Jonathan in this area, but I don't understand why. It's not a necessary touch, but I feel like that would have been really nice to have Jonathan Joestar, just Jonathan written there. Quite a tall looking guy, so let's get some exact looks at just how tall he is. Bottom of the base to the top of his head is about 9.5, just shy of 9.5 inches. The widest point appears to be from edge of base to edge of base, which is about 4.75, 4.8 inches. Depth wise, it's from the front of his hand to the back of the base, so guesstimating there about 5.5 inches in depth. Here he is on a Detolf shelf by himself, and although he's just shy of what most 1/6 figures are in height, because he's so much wider and his depth's a bit bigger, he can almost fill a Detolf shelf all by himself. Here he is next to 1/6 scale Jotaro Kujo, and as you can see he's quite tall considering he's not at full height and is cut off just below the knees. And here he is next to 1/8 scale Jotaro Kujo. So to wrap up, there is some slightly poor paintwork, and we can't blame him for the colour choices because it's meant to be accurate to the manga and the original drawings. So we have this slight splodge here, this looking a bit rough, and some very slight overlays in certain areas. But that is being incredibly critical, especially considering you're going to be viewing him from a distance. I mean, even from the sort of 8-10 inches I have the camera from the figure, it's hard to pick up those inconsistencies. So, taking into account how well he sculpted that, his muscles are done so well, all the details up here on his hat, so I don't think something I showed earlier, is the top of his hat as well. The hat and the hair is done absolutely phenomenally, together with his face. It's a shame his hand's in the way, but you know, it's a signature pose. Is almost everything in the sculpt is done absolutely brilliantly. These hanging details too on the trousers. There's a lot going on with this figure. There's a lot of hanging off bits and bits stuck to other bits, and because of that, I think the execution is actually done really, really well for something that's had to be mass produced and pumped out. Again, colour on the hat done absolutely perfectly. So we have slight compromise. There's a lot of green, and there could have been some differentiation done, but the texturing, the sculpting, the way the muscles is done, the way the clothes cling to the muscle, the overall anatomy, so 99% of it done absolutely brilliantly, and the size of it really good, especially considering the price point you'll be seeing this guy at. But considering he's had 3 releases, he's actually quite difficult to get a hold of. It took me a while to find him on the secondary market without an incredibly overinflated price, but you can find him, keep an eye out, for a good price, and I think he's a great piece to add to your collection, and you don't really have many other choices for Jonathan figures. There is a Dai Maltebene figure, but it's incredibly difficult to find and is incredibly expensive, and honestly I think I prefer this as a piece to that. So, in my overall opinion, a really well done figure with just slight paintwork chips, but you know, what can you expect when you're buying sort of these cheaper produced figures? But you know, you have to make up your mind. If you're going to be putting them in a display case, it's not going to be up in your face, you're probably never going to notice it. And to be honest, if I wasn't doing a review and I wasn't so close up with him, maybe I wouldn't have even noticed. So definitely a thumbs up for me. I think it's a great figure, great execution and great capturing of the character, and it's probably the most JoJo-esque figure in my collection, with just the overall overboardness of the fashion, the brightness of the colour in the hair and the face, the hat, the arm, everything, all these accessories, it's all done incredibly well. My gripes, incredibly small, so overall, really good, solid figure. I'd recommend you pick them up if you're a JoJo's fan. Until next time, take care.